What's going on, everybody? It's the Blockchain Raccoon, keeping you updated with the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Gonna go ahead and post this little video with Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse talking crypto regulation and the XRP lawsuit at the Milken conference today. Appreciate it, folks. Just go ahead and check out this little interview. Give a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for tuning in.
Brad, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Good to see you, Charlie.
You've been here at this conference in the past. I just want to get your feeling. You've been bouncing around. Different vibe this year?
Different vibe to some degree, but I think it's actually vibrant. There's a lot of obviously people here. It's one of the first conferences I've been to post-COVID, probably really the only one. And I think, it feels like the world is slowly returning to normal. They're being very disciplined about masks.
I know, we just got pulled over.
We did get pulled over.
Let's still go to your case, and I know that's kind of a very consuming thing. You guys are building out your business in Europe. I guess your focus here in the U.S. is this case that the SEC brought against you. Any updates on this?
Look, the good news for Ripple is since the SEC filed their lawsuit, we really haven't been able to operate in the U.S. because of this uncertainty that has existed and continues to exist. Outside the United States, we have continued to have an amazing year. Q3 is a record year on every metric. So we feel really good about the fact that we can continue to build the business outside the U.S. But on the other hand, I'm a U.S. guy. It's a U.S. company. Our headquarters are San Francisco. We have a big office in New York. And, I would like to see the SEC process move forward and get closure. I think the whole industry benefits from that clarity and certainty about how digital assets will be regulated, and that doesn't exist in the United States. And it does exist in other countries, frustratingly.
It does. You want it to be expedited. Does the SEC want it to be expedited?
Well, so far no. As you probably know, the SEC was in a hurry to file this case. It was filed a day before Jay Clayton, the then chairman, left office. And now, just recently, they've actually asked to extend the expert discovery process out into January, which, as you probably know, it's very unusual for the plaintiff to ask for a delay.
Oh, yeah.
Typically,
it's the other way around.
We're the ones kind of pushing, because we think it's very clear that this is not a violation of the U.S. securities laws. XRP is not a security, and we think that ultimately that will be proven out in the courts, so we want to get to the judge as quickly as possible.
I want to ask you about Jay Clayton, and I've known Jay for a long time. I've always got along with him. I know Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler was an MIT professor before he took Jay's job. But he had some interesting thoughts about Ripple. While he was an MIT professor, he thought it was a security. He thought it's exactly what Jay has said, or what the SEC under Clayton and now Gensler is saying. They met a bunch of times before that lawsuit. They met, I think, a day before the lawsuit. It was under the guise, or allegedly for transition team, because Gensler was on the Biden transition team. But they also met in March. What do you make of these meetings? Are they worrisome for you?
They're not worrisome. So first of all, one of the things you said, which I think is accurate, but also part of the confusion, is Gensler's on video in 2018 also saying he thought XRP wasn't a security.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the beautiful things about what's happening in the Twitterverse is people are finding these clips that are actually contradictions to what they might have said, and it gets to the heart of the lack of clarity. If the now chair of the SEC in 2018 was saying two different things, how can we, Ripple, how can I individually know what the SEC might think in the future? So, look, I believe very strongly that we will get to a good place here. I think it's clear that on Capitol Hill, they're paying more attention to this, frankly, partly because of your reporting. And I think that also is good for the whole industry. If we get into somebody, Gensler has also called out, hey, we need more clarity by saying that we need legislation, but he's saying it's clear there's a contradiction there. I think it looks like Capitol Hill is kind of leaning in a little bit now, which is, I think, a very
really? So
positive.
you think there's going to be some movement to maybe set an Uber regulator as opposed to this sort of mishmash of regulation?
Or just to write clarifying laws.
Oh, interesting.
I think you're seeing more senators, more representatives understand that this is a real issue. They're hearing from their constituents this is a real issue. The effort for XRP holders against the SEC now is apparently 45,000 people
John
here in the
Deaton,
United States.
the lawyer told me that, 45
Exactly.
and growing.
That is not a small number.
No.
And when those people start calling their representatives, start calling their senators, they pay attention.
You kind of ducked my question, though. Are you a little concerned about those meetings?
Look, optics matter, right? And so do I think some of the optics are a little bit, that's interesting. You know, it's kind of ironic because the SEC obviously, I think in a good way, fights for disclosures. They fight for clarity.
Right.
But then when we ask the SEC to provide disclosures and clarity, you see these things happening. You're like, wait a minute, shouldn't you know, what were those meetings? What was the substance and why? And look, what we seek more than anything is clarity and certainty. We think the SEC should play by the same rules around disclosures and clarity that we try to.
Bill Hinman gave that famous speech where he declared Ethereum I guess a cryptocurrency, no SEC involvement. Bitcoin, obviously. I found out later on that Jay did have some input, pre-publication, pre-speech. What do you think of that?
Well, I think one of the things the SEC has said is that was Bill Hinman's personal opinion.
Right.
You know, it's hard to feel like there's a lot of activity that suggests that's much more than one person's individual opinion.
Right.
When the SEC comes out and they post a speech on their website, when they reference it in other things, it feels like that's more than that.
All right. Speaking about optics, Bitcoin ETF. I just got off the phone with Mike Novogratz, crypto investor. I believe he's an investor in Ripple too, isn't he?
He is a shareholder. He's a shareholder of Ripple, which Ripple shares, those are securities.
Okay.
And they are registered.
Okay.
Or they're under an exemption.
I read that somewhere. That's good to clarify. I asked him about this, and he said it's symbolically, the fact that there is an ETF of Bitcoin, symbolically significant, huge. He used some superlative word. He was a little more dubious about the practical impact because it's a futures contract. Are you on board with that?
Well, first of all, Mike has been one of the most kind of prescient crypto investors out there. I think generally when he says stuff, I agree with him. In this case, I also agree. It's a baby step. It's unfortunate that all we can really expect from the SEC right now are baby steps. So I think it's a positive step, but I agree with him in the construct that it's actually a futures ETF as opposed to actually a pure Bitcoin ETF. It really is going to appeal, I think, to very sophisticated investors. To the extent we want to open up the industry, democratize the industry, allow access to the industry, I think it's symbolic, or I think that was a word Mike used.
And the downside to retail getting involved in futures, it's priced differently. It's not. It's a little more of an opaque market, correct?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you start getting into the weeds of how futures work, you're alienating a segment of the market that might not, be familiar with how futures work.
Okay. Before I let you go, will there be an XRP ETF?
Well, look, I think this it's a really important question, maybe less so specific to your exact answer, which I promise not to dodge. But why is the SEC picking winners and losers?
Yeah.
Why is a government entity deciding this is a winning one, which, by the way, happens to have, some pros and cons, massive power consumption, which isn't great for a climate agenda that Gary Gensler cares a lot about. But being silent about other things, and then, one of the challenges right now is Gary Gensler, who's been asked specifically about ETH, hasn't commented.
The Ethereum.
But if it's so clear, if the laws are so clear, and he's asked a specific question, then just answer the question, because it's clear.
Well, what's interesting is I have this debate with people all the time. They're like, well, the internet is regulated. I said, no, it's not. The internet is not really regulated. You can't post illegal stuff. You can't post kitty porn. You could post it, but you'll get arrested after you post it. That's where I think, would you agree with this notion that the regulation of not just the cryptos, but it all comes down to your technology on Ripple. It could have a stifling effect.
Well, I think it's already had a stifling effect.
Right. You guys
here in the United
overseas,
States, it has frozen certainly Ripple's activity in the United States. I think you saw XRP get delisted from most exchange or halted trading of most U.S. exchanges. So I think it has had a stifling effect here in the U.S. Hopefully when we get to the end of this, there'll be certainty and clarity, and frankly, it could be a very positive thing for the XRP ecosystem and community that it's the one crypto where there is clarity and it is certain.
Do you see a settlement of your case in the works?
Look, I would love to spend less time on this and be able to move forward. You know, the one thing that Ripple cares about more than anything, and really for the whole XRP ecosystem, is that there's clarity going forward that XRP is not a security. If that's not in the cards in a settlement, then there's nothing to settle.
I just want everybody to know, viewers, I've asked Gary Gensler to come on, I've asked Bill Hinman to come on, I've asked Jay Clayton to come on, I've asked the people at Ethereum to come on. I've asked anybody to come on. I'd ask who's the guy that created Bitcoin again? And that's
Satoshi? Well,
we
don't know.
We don't know, but I'd ask him.
He or she?
Nobody knows.
Or they?
They. No one said yes. You're the only guy that did. Thank you.
Well, thank you for looking into it.
Thanks.
Just do it. Make your dreams come true. Do it. Nothing is impossible. Do it. Make your dreams come true.